Hello everybody, it's Matt here from Matt Cars. I hope you're all well, and this is my weekly edition of Going Live, and you would have seen I carved this in the week. So hang on a minute, I just got a bit of feedback here, I'll get rid of that. Okay, so yes, so I carved this, and you would have seen the video for it. If you haven't seen the video, go and check that out. So I'm going to just go over this today and have a look at all the things that I sort of didn't cover in the video, or maybe go into a bit more detail, and also answer the questions that you have as I go along. And we are going to do that. Oh, g'day Mark, how's it going? Up early today, 8 o'clock. Right. Okay, so yeah, Mark, we're going to go over this skull carving, and I'm going to just talk about maybe a little bit about the spalted wood that I use and how I use the references as I make these pieces. So I'll just move that one. So this is actually, I'll talk about references first. And I just printed all of these references off the internet. Ah, Mark, you've been up since 6 a.m. Well, you do have kids, I guess, don't you? so maybe they've woken you up. Okay, so references. I actually got these ones off Canva. I'm a paid member of Canva, so I figured I could use them on YouTube and all of that. So I printed these off, and I made, like, first I cut my block of wood to a size that I could, because I only had a sort of certain amount. I made it as big as I possibly could. And then I made these sort of like the same distance and height. So you've got a front profile and a side profile. And you would have seen I taped sort of like it onto the wood, like that, and then I cut out each sort of dimension. So then and I cut that out on the bandsaw. I know people sort of like do different things. If you don't have a bandsaw, it just means you have to carve a little bit more when you're carving something. I just use the bandsaw sort of like as a blocking out tool. Oh, g'day Harley, how you going? Yeah, so just talking today about the skull carving and how I did it in a little bit more detail. So you can see sort of like I cut the eye out there, and pretty much when I was doing this, once I had this profile, I wanted to have, like, go back into the wood where the eye was. So I pencil marked that in once everything was sort of cut out. And so we're sort of like at the blocked out stage. And this is spalted wood. Not sure if anyone here has used spalted wood or not. So these are a couple of pieces that I have got. And this is spalted walnut. Just move the camera so you can see the end grain. So that's great on that end, but you can sort of see sort of that black delineation. So that's sort of like the fungus traveling through the wood, and that's actually hard, like wood that hasn't been affected there. You can kind of see it, and there's little pockets of it, so it leaves really, really cool kind of grains and all of that. Well, not grains, patterns, I should say. So, but there's a few things you've got to be aware of when you're using spalted wood. So one of them is that, well, there could be spores in the wood, but there's a lot of debate on whether spores, the fungus in the wood, is actually going to do you any harm. But, you know, if you're always wearing your dust mask, it doesn't really matter. So there's been sort of cases of people having an allergic reaction to the spores, as opposed to the spores growing in your lungs and then causing an infection. So, but I think that's pretty rare anyway, so not to worry too much about that. Oh, g'day Clay, how you going? So so then I kind of worked more off this reference once I sort of had the skull sort of shaped out. And you would have seen, so like I sort of like hold it like this and like this all the time and just try and get an idea. The first thing I did was actually sculpt the back of the skull, and I did that on the big disc sander. And so I just wanted to get that general shape of the skull happening. And then I moved on to the front, and I tend to do the eyes first, where I got the sort of shape of the top of the skull, and then the eyes, and then sort of like work down. So, so yeah, with the spalted wood, I'll just show you this. So this is my father's that butterfly that he made, so which is pretty wicked. And my father's really good at French polishing and varnishing things, so his finishes are amazing. So that's made out of spalted wood that he actually found on the beach up in Whakatane. So spalted wood is sort of needs a few conditions for it to do this. And one of them's moisture, and the other one's oxygen and a certain temperature. So, and then the fungus can sort of grow at those elements. And once you've sort of dried it, the fungus is, once it sort of becomes dry and you've dried it as well, the fungus is going to stop growing. So he made quite a few of those actually. Actually, I've got a few more. I'll show you. That's another one that he made, which is pretty cool. And so yeah, so how he did this one was he had a log, and let's grab this other one. This is really cool. So he grabbed a lot. This isn't spalted. This is just a piece of, I think it's Pahudakawa. So these lines in here, I think, are probably more just bark lines, maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway, so he had a piece of wood and then he split it on the bandsaw like that. So open it up. And so that's why this side is the same as that side. So, and then you can sort of hang them on the wall on this little hook. And the little antennae are peacock feathers, which are pretty cool. Yeah, they are amazing finishes, aren't they, Harley? Yeah, really cool. So, yeah, it's a beautiful colour, that wood. All right. So the thing with, when you're dealing with spalted wood as well, is some parts, just putting that away, some parts are going to be softer. Well, the white parts are going to be softer, whereas the natural wood, and this is black walnut, that's going to be harder. So when you're carving this, you've got to be aware of that. So what I did on these ones is I used sort of like longer burrs, so I would sort of like be touching that side as well as on that side. So when there wouldn't be too much of a dip if I was going through with a cone burr and I was just doing this would go down completely and this would stay up, if you get what I mean. So, and yeah, it can get really, really sort of really soft. This isn't too bad. But what I found was this got a little bit precarious in here, and it's not anatomically correct. I left, because that's supposed to sort of like be completely hollow through there, but I left a few sort of like points going back onto itself there. Oh, you got to feed those kids, Mark. Apparently, I don't have kids, so I'm not quite sure. I guess you feed them. Right, okay, so what were we up to? So yeah, so this part is definitely softer. So you've got to be just aware of when you're dealing with a spalted wood that it is softer. So, and I tried to make sort of the pattern, it's always, the pattern's always going to be different, but I quite like the fact that it's just a pure black walnut was at the front, and then this sort of like spalted bit was at the back. Whereas I think if I might have had a few problems with like the finer details if I'd had that spalted wood at the front. Maybe not. It was quite strong. But I see there's a lot of like skulls on the internet and all of that, and they're all. Have you seen the ones with the actual real teeth in? They're kind of creepy. I'm not sure where those real teeth are from, but they. Yeah, Mark. Yeah, some people say it is, but I don't think it is. But you know, if you're wearing your mask anyway, it doesn't really matter. Sure, you know. But I think the problem is only if you're allergic to the spores, not the spores are actually dangerous. So there'll be sort of certain parts of that spore that a few people have allergies to, which can happen with anything. So yeah. So I noticed too, like I'll just show you. Sometimes when I'm carving, this will happen. So once I finish, then I see my imperfections. So you can see these darker lines here, and they are just sort of not quite sanded quite right. So what I will do this morning is you can actually go back and just re-sand things, you know. So, and I think I've shown you this one before. This sort of mini disc sander that I've got, so you can change these sort of like out. Oh, g'day, Shalon. I hope I'm saying that right. Oh, cool, you're a new sub. Hey, welcome. So today I'm just sort of going through the skull carving and showing you sort of like how I did a few more things on it and all of that. So we've got those sort of like dark bits there, which are imperfections in sanding. So yeah, I've got these mini discs and they're kind of throwaway things. They don't last for that long. This sort of tends to wipe out after a while, and they're only like $8 New Zealand for this part. And I don't know, you get a pack of 20 discs for about $4.50 New Zealand. And I've got sort of 60 grit all the way up to 240 grit or 220 grit. Okay, so when you're using this thing, you want to turn your Dremel like right down. So you would have got it on there. Okay. I mean like right down, right to zero. So that's spinning away there. And so what happens if you speed it up is you'll see the foam will sort of distort. I'll show you. Yeah, you can't sort of do that. But that's when you sort of like, it just wipes out completely and destroys it. So I've got that dark mark there. I'll just sort of go in there. I can sort of hand sand it, but I thought I'd just show you sort of like what I use to sand the whole thing, really. I really like those sander actually. So you're trying to, like if you're going back, you're trying to not actually sand a flat spot back into it. So you obviously can't do this. This is just, like I just finished it with beeswax oil. So that's that gone. I'm not sure if I can get that, but there. Another bit there. So this is sort of just sort of like giving you sort of like ideas on how to, sometimes I like oil things just to sort of to see the imperfections, and if they're going to show up anyway, then I go back and sand them. So you wouldn't want to do this if you had varnish. You kind of almost with varnish, you have to kind of sand the whole thing. So these sanding discs are really, really good for bowls as well, because you can sort of like get into the bowl like that. and get that bottom bit. I'm not sure about overseas or whether you can buy these. I'm sure, like, I know Clay, have you seen these, or Harley? I think Harley's over in America, aren't you? I think so. Oh, cool, yeah, Ben on the Lake. Yeah, he's got a really nice, yeah. Yeah, he did say, I watched that video, he did say I was in Queensland, Australia. Yeah, oh, that's good. I think he has referred to me as being in New Zealand before on other videos. I know, it's an easy mistake to make. Okay, so we've got rid of those kind of areas. I'll just grab a foam sander. I'll just be back in a sec. Right, okay. So another one of my favourite sanding kind of things is these foam sanders. And they're really good because they can sort of like, they're really easy to hold and you can just sort of like get into it like that. And they're really good for sort of like curves. If you're curving, like if you're sanding sort of like chairs and stuff like that. Not that I've ever done that. But. So this is sort of like a semi-coarse one. I would say that would be about maybe 120 grit. And this is quite a fine one. It's probably about 220 or something. And they've lasted me for ages. I can't find any new ones though, so don't worry. So. Oh, right, you're in the UK. Cool. Can you like that foam sander just used? Link. I can't because I just bought it on a hardware store. I haven't actually set up, like I'm probably like a real bad business person on YouTube because I haven't actually even got like the Amazon thing. I've just sort of like started, so sort of, I guess you could sort of just go down to your hardware store. There are ones I know that are a little bit harder than this, but you want to try and find the ones that are soft like this. And there are ones that are quite hard foam, which are okay, but I really like these soft ones. And they last for ages. And they're pretty cheap. They come, like the ones I bought came in a pack of like 3 like that. And they said like preparing, finishing, as in the coarseness of it. Yeah, yeah. So they'll be in. Yeah. Oh, you're Bunnings. Is Bunnings Australian or New Zealand? I can never work that one out. It's probably Australian, I'd say, wouldn't it? Or was it New Zealand? Anyway, yeah. For those who don't know what Bunnings is, it's a hardware store. Well, it's sort of like gardening and all. It's one of those big multi kind of store things. Okay, so probably go to a bit of just normal sandpaper to try and get those marks out. Right. This is riveting, watching somebody sand something. Okay. I got all sorts of sanding equipment because I like the jewelry business that I have. I've got this sort of like I've got a disc sander. I've got one of those spindle sanders as well. I've just bought one of those finger sanders as well. Haven't really used it that much though. All right, I sand down to 220 grit. Yeah, so I've never used basswood, but it's quite a soft wood. 220 grit is probably like the grit that I would go down to, and it all depends on what you're actually trying to achieve as well. So if I find if you go in with afterwards, like just to polish it up, just to like one of these sort of like the material, and you can go in and it'll just bring out the grain a little bit more. It's sort of almost like polish it, and especially like if you're using beeswax. Okay, I'll show you what a finger sander is. It's probably not really good for anything small. So this is a finger sander. It's like a miniature belt sander. So you sort of hold it like this, and it's good for like details, but it's also good for sort of flat parts that you want to keep flat, if you get what I mean. So I will show you something that I use that on. Okay, so I use that on this boat. You just got to ignore these sticks here. But if you see these, this is getting turned into bronze as well. So if you see these ridges here, I use that to create those because there was a problem with going in with the Dremel bit, because there's the grain there, and as you go along the grain there'll be soft and hard bits, so you get a kind of wobbly effect. Whereas if going with one of these finger sanders, it kind of like takes it all down at once. Yeah. So that is a finger sander. Yep, it's the Makita finger sander. It's pretty good. I haven't really used it that much though. I'm quite impressed by it. If you remember the shop you got the foam sanders. Yeah, I got it from Placemakers, but I have also maybe seen them in Mitre 10. This is Shillong. Yeah, I've seen those foam sanders in Mitre 10 and Placemakers in New Zealand, but I haven't seen them for probably about 6 months. I'm not sure if they make them anymore. So, yeah, but I'm sure you can find something similar. Right. Okay. You know, they're not essential. You know, you can, you know, normal paper sanders is fine as well. Like you could do all of that with sanding the other side. You could do that with a paper sander. What I tend to do with that is I just have my thumb there, and take that down. You can usually, like with anything, it's sort of like you just use the things you've got. Don't worry too much about what you don't have. Just try and, yeah. I do have some nice toys, Clay. I don't spend much on anything else. I don't know, sanding's one of those things you can spend ages on it, can't you? So in the end, I just kind of go, oh yeah, that's good enough. So I've still got some darker areas left in there, but you know, it's a skull. It's supposed to look kind of rugged. So, like I said before, you can use kind of like this thing here. And what this thing does is it kind of polishes, it doesn't really take off anything, but it sort of will get rid of all the dust and grime off it. And it kind of feels like it's polishing it a little bit more. Right. I'll just show you these things. Let's put a bit more shine on that little bit there. It's probably got a little bit of beeswax, probably spreading that beeswax over as well. But it'll be getting rid of all the dust and little imperfections. So yeah, so that's that, and so what I do is for carvings like this, I put on that dark wax because I wanted to really bring out sort of like those little details there and all of that. But on carvings like this, where I want to really show off the grain, and it's already dark wood, so this is that's black walnut, and that's they call that the white rot of the spalted wood. So I'll just go ahead and put some of that on. And so that's gotten rid of those like marks, which is cool. I just really like the smell of beeswax. It's really nice, isn't it? So, and when you're applying it, so that's going to really soak it up because the rot that's gone through it, sort of like it's decomposing the wood, so it's going to be a bit softer and have more holes in it. So, you know, you can put another couple of layers on if you want. What I tend to do is I'll put one layer on, and then after a few weeks, if I want to make it look new again, I'll put another layer on. Oh, g'day Jim, how you going? Just going over a few things on the skull carving that I did on the week. Okay, so you notice too, I could have, on the skull carving, I could have like not gone to so much problem with hollowing all of this out, but I felt like when you sort of turn it, it gives it sort of that lightness, so it kind of feels like, even though you can't really see up in all of this, you get those little glimpses of like through the nostrils and all of that, so it really feels like it's a sort of got a big cavity in there, which is quite cool. So what I want to do in the future is I want to sort of do a few more sort of maybe tutorials on how to carve a skull, if anyone's interested in that. And I'm not going to probably do something sort of similar to this skull. I'll just sort of like make it a bit more simpler. I might do like a relief carving to start with. What you can do as well is you can leave that bottom jaw off. And I've actually got one here on that crazy carving that I did. So that's it with the bottom jaw off. You actually see that's actually really anatomically incorrect because if you see on this one, the teeth are quite a bit, you know, should be closer. But you know, with skulls, just like humans, they all look different. So you can get away with a lot of things. When you're doing a skull, you want to concentrate on the eyes, the nose, and those teeth and that cheekbone. That cheekbone really makes it for some reason. So, and you'll find too, like, what I really looked at when I was doing this, and I looked at other people's skull carvings, is the teeth actually go back almost in a U. Yeah, that mash-up carving was crazy. It was fun. Yeah. So yeah, it was cool carving. This always cracked me up when I carved that little thumb. Yeah. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so the teeth. You'll see on a lot of carvings they're sort of like a little bit too wide, and so it kind of looks like it's a whole mouth like that, whereas your actual jawline or the teeth line goes back into the jaw around there. So your teeth almost like a U that goes back on itself. So it's going back into there and not just sort of like a flat, if you get what I mean. So yeah, so I might do some tutorials on how to carve a simple skull. How does that sound? Right. What else is we can look at today? Okay. So let's put these to one side. I thought I'd sort of so maybe I'll show you how I did those teeth as well. So when I was doing the teeth, you would have probably only seen in the video. It's really hard when you're making YouTube videos. You've got to kind of keep it under 5 minutes to keep people's interest. And usually even then, you know, when you look back on your analytics, people only last about 2 minutes and then they turn off. I'm sure that everyone here probably maybe watches a little bit longer, but you guys are really interested in carving, so which is cool. Okay, so you probably saw me using this a lot, and which was the burr that I use mostly, and that's a real kind of like a fine sort of tapered diamond burr. But I also used at the start, I think I used this burr here. And what I did with that one is I just put on all the lines like that, and the teeth lines just to give me an indication of where they were. And then I went in with this one and I just sort of like fine detailed it, and you'll see with the teeth, you probably see them more on this one, as they tend to round up like that. And you try and get kind of like a sort of like a, I don't know, what do you call it, a ridge happening there between the intersection of the teeth and the skull to make it look a little bit more genuine. Oh, g'day. Hi, Mike. How you going? Okay, so do I use a separate speed controller or just use the variable dial on the Dremel? You know, I know I just use actually the speed control on the Dremel itself. So as in that one there. And I tend to just have it pretty much on maximum. And I know, you know, I don't think there's any wrong way to do it. People use the foot pedal and that gives you a little bit more control. But I just haven't got around to getting a foot pedal. I think you kind of have to jimmy rig it up on a Dremel, like use a different kind of Fordham foot pedal or something. And I've never really seen them that easily to get in New Zealand, so I just use a Dremel like that. Yeah, seems to work out all right. So yeah, so if you've got a Dremel and it's working out okay for you, it's probably pretty good. I'd say one of the advantages is of using a foot pedal. Yeah, yeah. My 4000 just tends to be on max. Like I'll slow it down for a few different things, like sanding and all of that kind of stuff, so it doesn't burn the wood. But I can see like a foot pedal would be good if for safety reasons, if you get it caught, the Dremel caught in something, you can just back it off. Whereas this, you have to kind of find the on-off switch, which is pretty good. Well, which is not pretty good, but it's kind of hard to do if your Dremel is caught in your hand, caught in your sleeve or something like that, which it shouldn't do. But I've only had one time that I was actually wearing a glove a long time ago, and it got caught in that, and for the life of me, I could not find the on and off switch. I was just panicked, and it was sort of like, it's quite funny. I ended up pulling just a plug out of the wall, which is probably the easier thing to do anyway. Okay, so you've literally just started. Yeah, so just start with what you've got. I use a Fordham. Yeah, Fordhams are cool. I've got a friend who's got a Fordham, and they're pretty much, all rotary tools may have slight differences. I think in the beginning, you just use what you've got, and the Fordham will do really well. I think, has the Fordham got a foot pedal? I think it does. Oh no, I think you can add a foot pedal onto the Fordham easier than you can onto the Dremel. So yeah, so when we were doing the teeth, we were doing just the outline with this, which is that piece there. And these are really cheap burrs. Well, that one is. That one not so. I bought that a little bit more expensive, that one. And I also used the Moira knife, which is a really nice knife. This is sort of like, if you're going to buy a knife, I kind of think this one is probably one of the ones that will see you. Yeah. Yeah, I've had a lot of comments, Harley, about that. It does take a bit more time to add, but I can see why, because that's how you learn, is you sort of like see what other people use. And it's really hard to see if you're sort of like just watching somebody carve, especially kind of like my carvings, because I'm always changing the burrs. Whereas I guess a lot of the wood spirits that are done in cotton bark, that you tend to use, well, you've probably all seen the Cutsaw Extreme Burr for that one. And that one's really, really good because it's sort of, you can sort of use a tip and sort of use that part. And on the cottonwood bark, it's really, it's quite soft wood for us, I'm told. I've never seen it myself. So, but you can see it when they're carving it, how soft it goes through and how quickly they can carve. Because a lot of my carvings are in hardwood, so it takes a little bit longer. So yeah, I'll continue with that, Harley. Yeah, thanks for that feedback. It's really good to know. So with the, like, you can get away without using a knife, but if you did want to buy a knife, these Moira knives are really good. I will think, which one is this? Yeah, this is the wood carving 120. And if you want to see how good this knife is, look at the English carver Giles Newman, and his spoons are out of this world. They are amazing. And all he uses is this knife, and he's got a scooping knife as well. So the good thing about this knife is it has a real fine point, and you can use that fine point to get into really tight spaces. And so I used it generally just to sort of maybe shape that top bit up a little bit there. Yeah, it is a really good price, and it is really good quality as well. And if you see that guy's Giles Newman's, I'll spell it out for you. He is really worth looking at. If you haven't, who here has seen his work? Giles. Now, he's not really on YouTube, but he is on Instagram. So that's his name, and he's an English carver. So look up that guy on Instagram. He's probably on Facebook as well. So have a look at him, and you will be amazed at his work. And he's I think I bought one of his courses a long time ago on how to carve a spoon. I actually did the spoon carving with this knife, and it took a long time. Like, you know, knife carving's really nice if you don't like breathing dust. And it's quite meditative as well. But I do enjoy using the Dremel. So M or I. Who's the I people? I'm not sure who the I can, like, there's me, Matt, and there's Matt Cornelius. Yeah. So anyway, right. Have you guys got any questions at all that you would like to me to try and answer? Or have you got any suggestions on videos that I could do in the future? One of the videos that I am going to make is I am going to do this skull out of, oh yeah, Mike Stinnett. Actually, I just bought his book, Mark. It's on its way, so it'll probably be here in about 3 months. Yeah, he's got a book out on how to carve a snake. So, yeah, so what I was saying is, hang on a minute, I just got to grab something. Okay, so I've got all these skateboards, and what I want to do is I'm going to make a skull out of the skateboard, so it'll probably be about this size. Yeah, cool. I will, Clay. Yeah, I'm going to try and do some tutorials on how to carve a skull. So yeah, so I'm going to make this out of I'll laminate some skateboards together. So with a skateboard, you kind of, like, I made this mushroom ages ago. So I get skateboards to make these little, you see them, they're little studs for earrings. So, and each brand of skateboard has a different color combination, sort of like a branding exercise. Okay, so yeah, I will do some, got a few uses for these skull tutorials, which is probably good timing for Halloween and all of that. So I will laminate, I did this skull quite a while ago as well. This really tiny one. And so that's out of one piece of skateboard. But for this, I will laminate, it'll probably be maybe about 10 skateboards together. You ordered it as well. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what it's like. So like I don't paint I don't really tend to paint my work, and I don't really tend to use a burner, or I don't even have a burner. And I know he uses a lot of burning techniques in his carvings, but I'm really interested to sort of see sort of the carving aspect and how he gets really fine lines in between the stick and the snake and all that kind of stuff. So, and it's always quite good to see how people teach things and all of that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that. My auntie loves skulls. My birthday is in December. Cool. Mark, do you do carvings, like three-dimensional carvings as well, or do you mainly do the relief carvings? So yeah, so those, and this wood is actually Canadian maple. So one of the things that's a problem with carving skateboard wood is it's just like plywood, and So you're going to be carving with the grain, and you're also going to be carving in grained as well, because you have, I think there's about 7 layers, and they're all going to be going different ways. So when you laminate it together, you're going to be carving sort of along the grain and into the end grain as well. I think Mark, if I remember rightly, was about $40, and I ordered it. It turned out cheaper if I ordered it through the Australian Amazon than the American Amazon. Yeah. Oh, it's good. 2D is hard as well, Mark. I think it's a great place to start. 3 dimensions, you kind of have to think in 3 dimensions. But it's also like I really enjoy doing two-dimensional work. It's kind of more painterly. It's kind of more. I just really like it. It's sort of like that wolf that I did, that one there. I really like the look of it. And you know, if your one that you sent me, the one. Let's take this up here. So if nobody knows, Mark actually sent me the pattern for that because he drew it. So that one there, and it takes a long time. They're hard to do, but I think you really get good at sort of like your lines and all of that kind of stuff. You do a lot of that kind of carving. Whereas when you're carving like in 3 dimensions like this, it's a real, like you got to be on the money when you're going through, because you can't backtrack and add a hand back. You've got to like leave enough wood to carve that hand as you're going back into the wood. So it's a real kind of like step-by-step process that you've got to figure it out in your mind, how the shield is going to rest on there and the wood, and then you're always taking it back. I do a lot of fixing up other artists' work for bronze casting, and that's all in wax, so I add on wax, and you can take off wax, so you can't really, like, there's a lot of skill to it, but like there's a lot of like leeway as well, because you can add the wax back onto it. And so like clay modeling is a little bit like that as well. So yeah, I believe like kind of like reduction kind of carving is probably the hardest carving you're going to do, because there's no leeway for mistakes. You got to get it right first time. You can't sort of like add it back on unless you glue another piece of wood back on. Yeah, Celtic designs are awesome. And you've just finished your first Celtic knot. Cool. Okay, so you should also look at Pictish carvings as well, and these are all from the Picts carvings. And what you'll notice with these carvings is these were done sort of like in quite early times, before sort of you had this kind of carving going on, where you had the under and over. So I can't remember what they called it, but they called it kind of like stage 1 and 2 carvings in time. Like rock carving started off as just inscribing lines into the wood, and then they started to go under and over carving and all of that kind of stuff. So it always starts to get a bit more complicated. So if you're just starting out, look up like Pictish wolf, and you can, I'm just reading the comments. Yeah, and so these ones sort of like, this one can take like about 15 minutes to do, whereas this one you'd take hours to do. But these are really good to start off with, and I did that one. These ones here with pretty much that burr there, which is the Dremel, I think 2mm severe burr, and it's actually less than 2 millimeters. I'm not sure why they say it's 2 millimeters, unless they're measuring it lengthwise. Okay, just have a look what's in the comments. Yeah, Mark's got a Pinterest page, so yeah, go and check that out. He's done some really good carvings, Mark. And yeah, I'll let you know if I need any more patterns, Mark. I don't know, Jim. It's not too bad, this one. Like, yeah, it might take you longer than 15 minutes, but it's not going to take you like ages. And that's okay, you know, you just get quicker and quicker at things. And I've got a video on how to carve that one, and also that bird. I thought that bird was really cool as well. So yeah, and for those that don't know, that these are all on my table. So that's my table there. And so we're slowly filling it up with carvings. We've got this one over here. This is the dragon. Yeah, so the pics were in Scotland. It's sort of I can't remember. I think they were from sort of just 1st century to, I'm not sure, maybe the 7th century, I think. And they had, there's very little known about them. And they were called the Painted Warriors. That's where the word comes from, Pictish. I think it's a Roman word for painted. So they all had tattoos over themselves, or they didn't quite know whether it was tattoos or painted on. But yeah, they were fierce warriors, and the Romans could not defeat them. But they just disappeared from history as well. Not a lot is known about them, but there's some pretty cool documentaries on YouTube about Pictish. So, and yeah, they're really good to learn to carve from. They're kind of real funky kind of designs. You'll see sort of like a lot of the animals have this kind of design like this. So there's some like cows and all of that, and they have that design on the stomach. I think it's just got that old worldly kind of feel to it. And I just print them off, and I just put them onto a piece of wood with a little bit of carbon paper, and then go over that. So I think we will call it a day there, unless you've got any questions. But yeah, I tend to do this live stream every week. It's 8 o'clock in New Zealand time. I guess it's, yeah. It's Tuesday today, isn't it? Yeah, it's 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, so it's probably maybe Monday night overseas in places. So yeah, so next week I will do another live, and I will try and do another carving this week and put it on to YouTube. Okay, well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we may see you next week, and thank you for watching and asking awesome questions. Okay, bye-bye.